Joining us to discuss the significance is Erika Donalds. She's chair of the American First Policy Institute Center for Education Opportunities, as well as she's the founder of OptaEd. So great to have you with us. Thanks for joining. What do you think the impact of President Trump's AI education executive order will be, and why was it important for him to use the authority and not wait for Congress to act?
Well, our education system in America is pretty antiquated, and it was important that President Trump put forth this endorsement of using artificial intelligence in education so that we don't continue to fall behind in the global competitiveness of our education system. Many schools are already using AI, but districts and the school system that's public take a long time to adopt new technologies. AI is really going to revolutionize education by adapting learning to each individual student's needs, and we need to adopt it as quickly as possible.
Now, as parents, when we think of AI for our kids, similar to other elements of cyber like social media or gaming, there's a dilemma, right? We don't want our kids to fall behind in learning, as you just alluded to. But how do we employ this tool, and address the concerns and the risks?
A lot of people think of AI as ChatGPT, and you don't want the entirety of the internet necessarily impacting your child's way of viewing the world. But AI can actually be used in very smart and efficient ways when it comes to education, such as adapting the learning and the questions, for example, or the lessons to how that child receives information. And the AI can then learn to continuously improve its way of communicating with that child on how the child responds. It's a smaller language model, a smaller use of AI that's more contained and is safer for use in education. We're actually using AI avatars in Optima Academy Online, such as Franklin Roosevelt, where you put all of their writings, all of their speeches behind an avatar, and a student can actually interview that historical figure, and they will be answering in a way that they would answer as a regular person. So it can be an immersive experience that really will enhance learning for students.
Yeah, I see how that could be more engaging to actually have an avatar pretending to be that historical figure. Reminds me of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, actually. Now, I want to get a sense, though, of what a small language model is. You alluded to it. Can you differentiate how that's different from like a ChatGPT?
Sure. ChatGPT is taking from the entirety of the internet. And, we always joke, if it's on the internet, it must be true, right? But a small language model that might be used for education would be a smaller data set that is a trusted data set for those purposes. One example would be the Federalist Papers, perhaps the Constitution. You might load all of our founding fathers' writings into a small language model so that if a student were to put in a prompt into that small language model, it would only be pulling from that trusted data to answer those students' questions.
Now, in communist societies, education is always where they go first, and it gets politicized. So how do we ensure there are guardrails so we don't allow the underlying models to get subverted by either political viewpoint?
Well, this is why it's so important to have transparency and open source when it comes to AI. And the industry itself has really pushed in that direction so that people know where the data is coming from and they can trust the information that's coming out of that tool, whatever the tool is. And if you look at any AI tool, it's giving you the sources of where it got the information in most cases. And so this technology is going to continue to evolve and develop. But whether it's a large language model or a small language model, the industry standard is to provide sources for the information that is coming out so that whoever's using it knows where this information is coming from, what source, if it's biased or not, and they can decide for themselves how to use that data.
Now, pulling up a little bit from the nuances of how it works, when we look back on positive memories of our education, we frequently think of a teacher, who has impacted us in some personal way or was able to break through to us. So how do we employ the benefits of AI to help our children, maybe with the rote aspects of education, such as memorizing, times tables or the state capitals, while ensuring not to lose the human empathy and the critical thinking that really our teachers, our valued teachers, bring to the table?
It's so important because you're right, teachers and that personal connection with learning is really what impacts children the most. AI is going to help teachers be more efficient in the things, like you said, preparing lesson plans, grading papers, finding ways to reach individual children where the problems themselves that the children are solving are put in ways that they can better understand. That way, the teacher can focus on those personalized connections, on the storytelling that only teachers can really do when it comes to teaching things, and make their jobs more efficient in the other areas so that they can continue to be the wonderful professionals that they are.
Yeah, so to elaborate on that, do you have any examples of this sort of co-pilot example that you're referring to where the AI assisted the teacher to be, more effective, but then they were able to actually double down on the things that we really want from our teachers in guiding our children?
Yeah, absolutely. In a classical school, a knowledge rich environment, for example, I love to watch our teachers with a classic book of literature in front of the class, reading together, discussing the characters. That really can't be replicated in an AI environment, that Socratic discussion. But when the child goes back and does some homework on that paper, or maybe they're writing a paper about the character, the AI can generate feedback for that student that says, how about this way of writing? How about the suggested better grammar in this area or that area? And can interact with that student to improve their writing when they're reflecting on that Socratic discussion that they had as a group of human beings.
And Erika, I can't help while we have you here as an education expert. We just read the headlines about what's happening in Texas with school choice and actually funding the money so parents can do a myriad of different things that are really tailored to their kids. What are your views on that? And is that something that you think should expand nationally?
I was a big supporter of the Texas bill, very excited to see it heading to Governor Abbott's desk to expand school choice in the Lone Star State. Parents really need options when it comes to their education. That's how I got into education. I needed a different option than the zoned public school that my child was in. And when I found that great fit for him, he thrived to the rest of his K-12 education. There's so many other parents out there that need this. But going back to this technology, it's the schools of choice and the parents directing the education that's going to bring in these innovations more so than the bureaucratic districts that are so slow to change and innovate. And so if we want to adopt these new technologies and these new innovations in education, I'm looking at parents, I'm looking at schools of choice who are competing with one another to innovate and do better and better for our kids.
And as we finish up, Erika, what are the challenges to accelerate what seems like is very student focused, making resources available to parents and for students that may not be able to just take what's right down the middle?
Bureaucracy is always the answer. Unfortunately, our education system is loaded down with red tape and bureaucracy that doesn't put students first when it comes to teachers unions, school boards, politics. It's not putting students first and parents in the driver's seat. That's why school choice is so important, to make parents into consumers, and they can make informed decisions about what school environment or academic program is going to work best for their children. When you have a free market and that competition, it's going to be much more efficient in finding the best path forward for our education system, because only 1 in 3 students are reading and doing math on grade level in our country. It really is a national crisis, and we need the free market to solve it, not bureaucracy.
Yeah, the data is very concerning, but some of the solutions are very encouraging. I appreciate you joining us this morning. Erika Donalds, thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks so much for having me.